Welcome to Histoire et Mystère. Today's story, the Titanic Shadow, the lost chart of the New World. Stay till the end. The cold Atlantic did not just swallow the Titanic, it swallowed an era. But what it left behind in the frozen silt of the seabed was a secret that would take a century to breathe again. In the spring of 1912, as the unsinkable Palace of Steel groaned in the darkness, a leather satchel was clutched by a man who knew the gold inside was the least valuable thing he carried. He wasn't a king or a titan of industry, but a silent architect of a shadow history that linked the crumbling empires of Europe to the rising concrete canyons of New York. This is not the story of the sinking, you know. This is the story of the map that survived the ice. The air in London during the winter of 1911 tasted of coal smoke and whispers. Thomas Sterling, a man whose family had served as fixers for the British Crown since the Napoleonic Wars, sat in a dimly lit office in Whitehall. Across from him sat a man whose face was partially obscured by the shadow of a broad-brimmed hat. They weren't discussing the threat of Kaiser Wilhelm's navy or the growing unrest in the Balkans. They were discussing a document known as the Veritas Chart, a map supposedly charted by a renegade Templar navigator in the 14th century. It suggested the existence of a massive, untapped vein of rare minerals in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, long before the first colonies were even a dream. Sterling knew that if this map reached the American industrialists, the balance of global power would shift overnight. The British Empire, struggling to maintain its grip on its colonies, needed that leverage. But there was a leak. A faction within the German intelligence was already hunting the chart. The decision was made to transport the original document across the ocean on the grandest stage ever built, the RMS Titanic. When the ship set sail from Southampton on April 10, 1912, Sterling was on board under an assumed name, Mr. Arthur Vance. He walked the decks of the first-class promenade, watching the elite of the world, the Astors, the Guggenheims, and the Strausses. They were unaware that the heavy trunk in the hold held a secret that could bankrupt their empires. Sterling wasn't alone. He was being shadowed by a man named Klaus Richter, a deep-cover operative for the German Black Eagle Society. The voyage was a masterpiece of opulence. By day, the sun glinted off the polished brass and the vast, blue expanse of the sea. By night, the chandeliers of the grand staircase cast a golden glow over men in tuxedos and women in silk. But beneath the luxury, a silent war was being fought. Sterling realized his cabin had been searched on the second night. He moved the chart from his trunk to a small, waterproofed leather pouch he wore strapped to his chest. On the night of April 14th, the sea was unnervingly calm, like a sheet of black glass. Sterling was in the smoking room when he felt the shudder. It wasn't a violent crash, but a long, grinding vibration that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. He rushed to the deck. The air had turned lethal, a biting cold that felt like needles against the skin. He saw the iceberg, a ghostly, jagged mountain of white receding into the dark. As the unsinkable ship began its slow, agonizing tilt forward, Sterling didn't run for the lifeboats. He ran for Richter. He found him near the mailroom, which was already flooding. The two men, enemies of state, stood knee-deep in freezing water as the ship groaned. There was no room for politics in the face of the abyss. Richter, realizing the ship was lost, made a desperate move for the pouch. They fought in the dark, the sound of rushing water and groaning steel echoing like a dying beast. Sterling managed to shove Richter back as a surge of water burst through a bulkhead, sweeping the German into the dark. Sterling scrambled back to the deck. The band was playing a haunting melody that cut through the screams. He saw the terror in the eyes of the wealthy and the poor alike. In the face of the ocean, every title was stripped away. He reached the railing just as the bow submerged completely. The stern rose into the air, a terrifying silhouette against the stars. Sterling didn't jump for a boat. He jumped for the dark, freezing water, the pouch still tight against his ribs. The cold was a physical assault. It felt like his blood was turning to slush. He grabbed onto a piece of floating debris, a wooden door frame from the lounge. Around him, the world was a symphony of dying sounds. And then, silence. The Titanic was gone. Sterling was one of the few pulled from the water by the returning lifeboat 14. He was half dead, his skin blue, but his hand was still clamped over his chest. When he finally reached the deck of the Carpathia, he was a ghost among ghosts. He arrived in New York not as a hero, but as a man who carried a secret that now felt like a curse. He looked at the skyline of Manhattan and realized the map he carried was now the only evidence of a history the ocean tried to delete. Decades passed. Sterling lived a quiet life in Vermont, never speaking of the map or the night the world ended. But in 1998, a deep-sea salvage team began a secret expedition. They weren't looking for jewelry or coal. They were looking for the Vance trunk. What they found at the bottom of the ocean was a rusted box, but inside was something even more shocking. A second map, carved into titanium, showing that the Veritas chart was only half of the story. The other half was hidden in the very foundation of the Statue of Liberty. The mystery of the Titanic isn't just about a ship that sank. It's about the shadows that survived. The gold may be gone, but the truth remains anchored in the deep, waiting for the next brave soul to dive into the dark. Thanks for watching.